That must be the tear gas. We do see smoke.
That scene playing out earlier today on Moss Street. Police in riot gear and on horseback shoot canisters into a crowd of people protesting the shooting death of Trayford Pellerin by Lafayette police. And good evening, everyone. Trayford Pellerin is the man who was shot and killed by police last night. Police say they were called to a disturbance at a convenience store on the Evangeline Thruway involving Pellerin. They say he was armed with a knife, and when he tried to walk into another convenience store, they opened fire. The family attorney disputes that Pellerin was armed. In video recorded by a witness, though, you could hear at least 10 gunshots. Pellerin was 31 years old. Officers are still standing guard near the substation on Moss Street, the scene of that confrontation we showed you just a moment ago. While much of the protests stayed peaceful tonight, we did see moments of violence there tonight. Chris Welty planned to join us from the substation, but was met with a warning from police about safety. Chris, where are you now?
Hey Jim, we're actually across the street. We're in the Northgate Mall parking lot across from the police precinct. When we did pull up, we went up to the fence and asked officers if we could park in their lot, and they said that it was not safe. They said that people were actually firing paintball guns, and several of the units were struck by paintballs, and that people were throwing rocks. Let me step out of frame. You can see that the Sheriff's Office SWAT team, they are starting to unload and get back into their vehicles, and they're starting to clear out from the police precinct here, but it's much quieter than what it was about an hour and a half ago. And take a look at this video. All right, so it sounds like we don't have that video, but in that video you could see the protesters lined up at Pine and Moss Street, met with police in riot gear and on horsebacks. The police department did fire or give a 10-minute warning saying that if the crowd did not disperse within 10 minutes, that everyone would be arrested, no questions asked. Police did extend that warning just a little bit further, and then eventually they fired off several flares, and we could see that a smoke was starting to disperse and the crowd started to break up. A good majority of the protesters did push back while others moved forward, and some kicked the canisters. We did see at least 3 people get arrested here on Moss. This evening I spoke with Tara Laxey. She's a member of Unity 7. Her organization, very active in the community. She says she's heartbroken that a scene like this is that has played out across the country so much is happening here in Lafayette. She's also frustrated community leaders are not here to speak with residents and protesters. She said only Councilman A.P. Rubin was out here earlier this afternoon when Laxey heard the news of officers telling us some of their units were paintballed. She had this to say.
Well, if they have paintball marks on their cars are still going to run. We have a 31-year-old brother who had 11 bullets put into him last night. He'll never run again. His mother and father have to bury him. So you tell me what's more important. Do they not know how to be personable anymore? Can they not acknowledge the hurt and pain and the outcry of my community?
Tonight, Laxey is pleading for protesters to remain peaceful. She says that nobody should want to come in and resort to violence or destroying things. Laxey calling this a sad day for our community, saying it's time to come together, demand transparency, and fair and equal treatment for everyone. Live in Lafayette, Chris Welty, KATC TV3. Jim, back to you.
Okay, Chris, thanks. And here was the scene earlier today along the Evangeline Thruway where hundreds of protesters blocked the thruway right near I-10 and I-49. Police did remain at a distance at that point in the day as protesters shouted no justice, no peace, and Black Lives Matter. We did hear from the sheriff and the police chief in that news conference that's underway right now about that protest. They said it was unlawful. They did not want people out there, and even members of the NAACP have also condemned the protesters blocking traffic and disrupting traffic there today. Well, that anger and emotion were palpable on the streets of Lafayette today, but who came out to protest and why? Amon Boyd with that part of our team coverage.
No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! No
Chants from protesters following the death of Trayford Pellerin. Some coming out who knew Pellerin personally, others there to show their support.
11 bullets being unloaded on someone that I knew, that I saw in our community, that never bothered, to my knowledge, anybody. You know, I would see him and he would go about his business. To see that happen last night was devastating.
Something absolutely has to change because we don't want our citizens dying when there was other routes to protect our citizens, which is their job.
Several community organizations, including the NAACP, organized this event to create change within the city. Some who attended say they're hurting for Pellerin's family.
It broke my heart. As the black son of a black mother, my heart breaks for his mom. My prayers go out to her.
Others say they still have more questions about how the situation was handled.
I don't understand why, as you see in the video, he's walking down the road, why they didn't use non-lethal tactics to stop him then. With multiple officers there and 10 shots fired, I think that's a little ridiculous.
The goal is the same for all in attendance: improved relations between the black community and police.
It's very imperative for you to be strategic in your fight for justice. You got to strategize. You got to follow the narrative of the legal representation that you have. No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! No.
In Lafayette, Iman Boyd, KATC TV3.
Meanwhile, a prominent civil rights attorney is now representing the Pellerin family. Ben Crump confirmed the news on Twitter today. He's represented the families of Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, and most recently the family of George Floyd. Crump is calling for honesty and accountability from Lafayette police and says the officers involved should be fired. As for the officers involved, Lafayette police confirmed to us they are on administrative leave, but they would not say how many officers were involved in the case and how many are on leave. But we do know that in the past 24 hours, 3 police officers have been placed on leave. It's unclear how many officers opened fire last night. In that video, you could hear at least 10 gunshots. For the latest updates on this case, we'll have those posted over on KATC.com. We have a news conference that just wrapped up over at LCG, with LCG officials, I should say. We'll be getting the latest from our Kendria LaFleur, who's covering that, coming up in just a bit.